Act 5, Scene 1. The building background talks about sleepwalking as usually a sign of a troubled mind, a troubled psyche, somebody that can't sleep peacefully, is troubled and has some inner demons, some guilt, something that keeps them from sleeping peacefully. This particular scene is Lady Macbeth's most famous scene, where she utters the words, "Out, out, damn spot," where people are witnessing her sleepwalking, and she's constantly doing this with her hands. Out, out, damn spot. What do you think she's referring to? Blood. Okay, that motif, that she even is having the guilt that no matter how much she washes, she still sees spots, blood, splatter. Okay, and so she's troubled by that. This is really her swan song, her big going out of the play scene. In that this is really her last time that we see her. We hear about her later on, but this is kind of her last big stage moment. Pay attention to the doctor and the chamber woman who is watching her and how they talk. And I don't know if you've ever talked to somebody who maybe not necessarily sleepwalking, but they talk in their sleep and can have conversations. It's kind of weird sometimes. And yet she's talking to herself, and she does certain actions nightly or pretty regularly that she's been witnessed doing these before. And there's a line that she says things that she should not know of. And so, it's almost like a confession to some degree, and other people are hearing of it. But it's interesting to note, remember how I've talked and stressed from the beginning the roles of Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, how strong of characters they were, and especially Lady Macbeth, and how we've seen her role change and go up and down throughout this play. When it's really necessary, and when Macbeth has needed some support, she's right there to push him forward. Here is where we see her at her weakest moment, and she really is a shell of what she was at the beginning, which can be considered tragic also. Throughout this act, we will see those tragic flaws that we've talked about earlier. We will see the payout for having those, and what they ultimately what happens as a result of having those negative impacts on their lives. So scene 1, in Macbeth's castle at Dunsinane, we see Lady Macbeth. We don't see her yet. We see the doctor talking to the gentlewoman. And Dr. Wright says, I have 2 nights' watch with you, but there's been no truth to your reports. You've told me that she walks in her sleep, but I've sat here for 2 nights watching, and that hasn't happened. Well, she's coming. She does this a lot. He wants to know, have you heard her say anything? Line 12, 13, 14, around in there. Oh, that, sir, which I will not report after her. Well, you made to me, and 'tis most meet you should, so you should tell me. But she's afraid to even mention the things that she's heard. Okay, the foul things, the guilty things, okay, the condemnable things that she's done. She doesn't want to repeat, hearsay, that type of thing. I don't want to be gossipy. I'll let you, if you hear her say it, then you hear it out of her mouth, but not from me. Here she comes. So she comes walking out, and as it says, she's unaware that others are watching her because she's sleepwalking. He comments that her eyes are open, but she goes, but her senses are shut. Okay, she's walking, looking around, just doesn't see anything. And she goes through certain actions and does certain deeds, repetition, and then goes back to bed. And the gentlewoman character's name, she's witnessed these a couple times. The doctor notices, look how she rubs her hands. Oh, it is an accustomed action with her to seem thus washing her hands. And that's where we know what she's doing before she even mentions about the blood. Okay, because there was a whole thing about Macbeth. Will all the great Neptune's ocean wash these hands clean? And he goes, no, it'll turn blood. And then she comes in and goes, look, a little washing takes care of this deed. At the time, she was fine with it, the action of it. But here in her mind with this guilt, she cannot get the blood out. It is soaked into her hand. And I've known her to continue this for a quarter hour. So for 15 minutes, she sits there and does this stuff. Yet, here's another spot. Hark, she speaks. I will set down what comes from her. So you can imagine, whatever she said, I'm going to write down. Oh, she's going to talk. Okay. And the stuff she starts talking about. I mean, it's almost like a confession. And it's amazing. Out, damn spot out, I say. Blah, blah, blah. The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? Who would have thought that the old man have had so much blood in him? Okay, so mentioning the murders of Macduff's family and Macduff's wife, talking about the old man with the amount of blood he has in, knowing that he was killed in her house. And, doctor, did you hear that? Do you mark that? The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now? Go away, gentlewoman. You have known what you should not. You don't want to hear any more of this. You don't want to know this stuff. She goes, well, she has spoke what she should not. I am sure of that. Heaven knows what she has known. The doctor ultimately says that, the disease is beyond my practice. Okay, yet I have known those which have walked in their sleep who have died holily. So what he was saying earlier is a little bit to what I alluded to before we went through this, was that, a lot of people with problems, mentally or guilt, they sleepwalk. And so he goes, well, I've known people who have died wholly in the bed who are good people. So it's not always a bad thing. So maybe this isn't legit. But Lady Macbeth to bed, and she leaves. The doctor's last little thing to the gentlewoman, line 68, around in there. Unnatural deeds do breed unnatural troubles. Infected minds to their deaf pillows will discharge their secrets. So infected minds to their deaf pillows will speak to their pillows, will confess throughout their sleep. And more needs she, the divine, than the physician. So she needs more help from a priest. She needs some confession. She needs some, instead of a physician, a doctor. There's nothing that I, doctor, can do for her. It's all something that she needs to take care of up here, or find somebody that can listen to her and help with that. He says, look after her, remove from her the means of all annoyances, so anything that she can injure herself, almost like a suicide watch. If you've ever seen that in psychiatric wards or prisons, they'll take your shoestrings, they'll take your bed sheets, things like that, so you can't harm yourself. And he says, just in case, you just keep an eye on her and make sure everything's out of her way.